I'm Michaela Lafrac, and these are the highlights from the lieutenant governor debate between incumbent progressive Democrat David Zuckerman and Republican John Rodgers. During the debate, the candidates had similar views on many issues, but differed on the role they said the state should play in addressing the high cost of health care.
I know that the federal government seems completely dysfunctional, but it is really their responsibility. With the high cost of living here in Vermont, I don't see how there's any way for us to take on a single payer on our own.
So just to be clear, this is a situation, the high cost of healthcare, in which you think that the federal government needs to lead the way in reducing the cost
Absolutely.
for Vermonters.
Absolutely. This study said that we're already spending more than enough money based on European models to cover every man, woman, and child in the country, and we need to get rid of waste and fraud. We need to make sure that insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies aren't gouging us. Why do we pay 3 times more for the same drug as a person in Canada? So there's a lot of things that the federal government has been negligent in not taking care of that could help us a long ways to taking care of healthcare in Vermont.
I do support universal health care in Vermont. It's not inexpensive, but of course our current system is way too expensive. The costs are going up every year. We continue to have reports showing double-digit increases in the percentages that we're paying for insurance and for coverage. We know with Bernie's work and the FQHCs, there's been a big investment in primary care around the state, and that's good. We need to continue to do that. We know that about 20 to 30% of our dollars go towards insurance overhead and paperwork and figuring out who's paying what, whereas a universal system would save that. The reason it'd be more expensive in Vermont than some other places is because we're also an aging state. So we have to take that into effect. But yes, I support a universal system, have for a very long time.
When asked if they support a clean heat standard in the state, the candidates had different views, but they did agree that the current plan could impose too high a cost on everyday Vermonters. Last week, the utility regulators came back and said a clean heat standard is not the right policy for Vermont. They think it'll be too costly for a small state like Vermont to run. And there's also a concern that any increase in costs will be passed down by the fuel dealers to consumers. Do you, Lieutenant Governor, we'll start with you, do you support a clean heat standard for Vermont?
Well, clearly the reason for asking them to figure that out was to see what the consequence would be. And at that scale and with their assumptions, that is too high a cost to bear for everyday Vermonters with the way that shift would happen. On the other hand, there are those that say, then let's do nothing, or they don't come up with another idea.
I do not support a clean heat standard, and I knew it was going to be too expensive even before they implemented it. The problem with my opponent and the supermajority is they believe they can spend Vermonters' money better than they can. The legislation has been regressive, and that needs to change. It needs to be at market rate.
As Vermont faces a homelessness crisis, both candidates said the state has to do more. Vermont's homeless population has tripled since the pandemic, according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And without additional federal funding for shelters, how should the state keep people housed this winter? Lieutenant Governor.
In order to house people through this, it will cost us more in health costs when people are out living in tents and in parks and otherwise, in the emergency room and in reduced education circumstances for our kids.
Okay.
It's one cost to save another.
There's many more families now than there were 3 months ago who are experiencing homelessness because the state has cut down on the motel voucher program to save costs. Do you think that the governor and the legislature should find a way to reinstate the motel voucher program?
I think we're likely going to have to if we can't come up with any other viable alternatives. But I'll tell you, on the campaign trail, I talked to one guy who serves foreclosures, and one of the things that I'm worried about with the rising rates of property taxes and electric bills and everything else, he says he's serving more foreclosures than ever before.